Welcome to Scaling Up H2O, the podcast for water treaters by water treaters, where we're scaling up on knowledge so we don't scale up our systems. Hi everybody, Trace Blackmore here and Scaling Up Nation. It was so awesome seeing so many of you at the recent AWT convention and expo. Folks, I gotta tell you, when I started this podcast just a little over a year and a half ago, I had no idea that the folks out there in the Scaling Up Nation were going to love the podcast so much. I didn't even know there was going to be a Scaling Up Nation. But when you come up to me and let me know how you've tried something new, how you went after something that you wouldn't have done if you had not gotten inspired because of listening to Scaling Up, folks, I got to tell you, that's awesome. But I also want to tell you that was all you. Maybe I gave you that little bit of nudge to put you in that direction, but you did the legwork. So I want to thank you for letting me know that the Scaling Up podcast has inspired you, and I want to keep inspiring you to keep being great. So do those things that you know that you need to be doing to be successful, and we're actually going to continue that theme on today's show. Of course, we're also coming off of celebrating Industrial Water Week. How cool was that us water treatment folk had our own holiday? James McDonald, thank you so much for that. We now have a holiday, and I hope you use that to set some goals for yourself, to reach out to your fellow water treaters, and remind yourself that only an industry that is just incredibly awesome is worthy of having its own holiday. And it's not just one day, it's 5 days. So folks, if you're going to be in this industry, make sure that you are making this industry better. And I know a lot of you came up to me and told me at the AWT that you started using the service Audible because I recommended it. And folks, it's no secret, I like to read and I don't have time to read. When you read, there's only one thing you can do, and that's of course hold that book and read it. And I like to do that as often as I can. But let's face it, I just simply don't have a lot of time to close everything out that's going on and pick up a book and read it. But you know, just like me, just like you, we are in the water treatment industry and we have a lot of windshield time. And I think that's why this show is so successful, because we can get information while we're driving. Well, Audible is the exact same way, and it's how I read 35 books a year by using Audible. So if you want to use Audible too, go to scalinguph2o.com/Audible. You'll get a free month, a free book, and you can try that service for yourself. Now that's an affiliate link of mine, and what that means is that Audible will pay me a commission if you go to that, but it does not cost you a dime extra. So just wanted to let you know that, being totally transparent with the Scaling Up Nation. And maybe what I was doing there was selling. Maybe I'm selling the fact that you need to read more. Maybe I'm selling the fact that I have a solution to get you to read more. Well, today's show is about selling. And it doesn't matter if you consider yourself a salesperson or not. If you are in this industry, if you are in any industry, if you ever communicate with another human being, you are selling. And I know we have a lot of different ways to look at selling, and a lot of them aren't very flattering. So we're going to talk about that today, and we're going to talk about what some people do to make themselves a little bit more successful at sales, or what I like to say, at communicating than others. So we're going to be joined today by a great sales coach. His name is Dan Jourdan, and I hope you enjoy my interview with Dan Jourdan. My lab partner today is Dan Jourdan, and Dan calls himself the Sales Energizer. Dan, I'm so happy to have you on Scaling Up. How are you today?
You know, I'm living the dream, baby. How about you?
Absolutely. Well, you have a way of just telling people the truth when it comes to what they should be doing when it comes to just getting out there and making sales. So I'm hoping we talk a little bit about that today and just find out a little bit more of how to become more well-rounded salespeople.
Well, I'll be happy to help. That's what I do best.
Well, before we get started, could you tell the audience a little about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. You introduced me as the sales energizer. Let me tell you this story that'll explain the whole thing. I just came back from India. I had a speaking gig there with an IT company that was looking. Basically, they wanted an American face at their company to be their sales manager or what have you for this convention. But I had to say a few words, and I spoke to the crowd, and I realized very early on that nobody really understood me. I mean, I speak fairly clearly, but I'm New Jersey, fast talking type of conversation, which is not what they're taught in school. And so I was a little apprehensive when I was going out there to speak, but I did, and I said a few words, and it was like, I'm telling you, Trace, it was like I was Elvis. They were standing there with their mouths wide open and like sheepishly walking up to me afterwards, asking if they take a selfie with me. And it was crazy how well this went off. And I asked one young lady, what she heard. She could speak English. I said, what did you hear that was so special? What she said to me is the answer to your question in a long-winded way. She said, I heard nothing, but I felt your energy. And that's, if you want to, in a nutshell, what you want to do to become a better salesperson, you need to transfer your energy to your prospect because they crave it, they need it, they desire it, they're attracted to it. And so I call myself the sales energizer because that's what I've always been able to do. And I travel around and I give presentations and I blow the roof off, not only of the convention, but I help the salespeople in the room blow the roof off their sales. How's that?
I think that's great. And you've been doing this for a long time. You're a master at this. How does somebody that's mediocre at sales begin to do what you do?
Great question. And the answer is you need to want to first. I mean, that's a lot of people are turned off by even being called a salesperson. They're embarrassed by my mother's that way. Till this day, if you had my mother in a room right now with you and you say, "Hey, how's Danny doing?" She would say, "He's fine, doing well. He's in between jobs, but he'll." I mean, I'm telling you, she will not tell her friends that I'm in sales because her impression of a salesperson is Herb Tarlick from WKRP in Cincinnati. You know that guy. It's just, that pushy car salesman kind of embarrassing mentality. And I think in the minds of a lot of people, they have that same type of thing. That's why people, financial consultants don't call themselves salespeople. They call themselves financial consultants. Insurance agents, insurance salespeople don't call themselves that. They call themselves, brokers or consultants or what have you, because there's a little shame involved in there. Now, so the way to start, the first step is to toss that out of your head and understand that nothing good in the world has ever happened without a salesperson selling it. Even Thomas Edison, nobody was going to take a light bulb. They thought it was crazy. Color TV. I remember my parents telling me, don't sit too close. It's going to hurt you. Color TV is bad for your eyes. Color TV is bad. Everything has to be sold. You make people's lives better by presenting a product that you have. What you guys, the water treatment and things that you're selling, you're literally making lives better. You're saving lives. You're helping people. You're helping companies earn more money, which in turn is going to make their lives better. You're doing all that. So you need to understand that you're in the most noble profession out there. A good person can do a lot more good being successful than being unsuccessful.
I think that's great advice. If you don't believe in yourself, how are you going to get your prospects and customers to believe in you?
Yeah, well, and I tell this to people, and I tell it to my children. I tell it to everybody. I go, you want to be a better salesperson? Be a better person, and you'll be a better sales. You want to be a better accountant? Be a better person. Act like the person that you'd like to become. And more than likely, you'll see that person in the mirror very soon. And the person you'd like to become is not squeamish and not embarrassed of their profession. The person that you'd like to become is not someone that sits in a corner and hides and waits for people to come to them. The person you'd like to become is a difference maker, someone who goes out there and does good in the world by moving more of their product than the next guy.
Well, I think you're laying down a great foundation. Let's move on a little bit more. So, how does somebody assess themselves to see how good they are at actually doing what you just advised?
One of the beautiful things about the sales business is that you can keep count. I mean, there's numbers involved. I'm not saying that money's the only thing that's important, but it's one of the few things you can count. Years ago, I went on a hitchhiking trip. It was a terrific hitchhiking trip. And I took no money. I just got jobs along the way. And I was gone ultimately for 8 months. And I learned more in that trip about life and about sales. And I used the same skills that I used to get rides then. I use the same skills to make sales today. And I learned very quickly that there's a very fine line between a hitchhiker, one who gets rides, and a smelly bum on the side of the road with their thumb hanging out. You can't very well call yourself a hitchhiker if you're not getting picked up. And you can't very well call yourself a salesperson if you're not making sales.
Well, that's an interesting analogy.
That's your job. That's your job. So, how do you assess yourself? You take a look at your numbers. That's what you do.
So, what are some of the metrics that you look at on a regular basis?
Oh, that's a great question. And I have a coaching program that I do for salespeople and for companies, and I build sales programs for companies. But my individual one-on-one coaching is probably the most effective thing for people because, individually you could work on the activities that it takes to get the results that you want. And so what we do and what I tell my team and the people that I'm coaching is that the results or the goals that you're looking for, and I don't really call them goals, I call them expectations, but I'll talk about that later. But that pot at the end, you're going to celebrate that no matter what. I mean, that's just exciting. When you make your goal, everybody celebrates and does stuff like that. But to get there, what we practice is we celebrate the activities and we wait for the results to happen. So every day we're taking the measurements of those activities that are going to get those results. So what are those activities? Well, how many people did you talk to today? How many times did you pitch your product today? How many no's did you get today? How many cold calls did you get today? How many incoming leads did you produce today? How many blogs did you put out today? How many tweets did you put out today? How many engagements in social medias did you do today? How many speeches did you give today or prepare for? How many appointments did you set today? So the daily activities is what we measure and celebrate. So, I mean, if your goal is to say, heck, I'm going to talk to 20 people today, and you got no sales from it, that's a good day. You can go to bed that night saying, I won. That's a winning day because we know with the certain actions, we know what the results are going to be. So we just work on those daily actions. That make sense?
I think that makes a lot of sense. Now, eventually, at some point, somebody's going to be wanting to see some sort of revenue coming in. So how do you know when the activities that you're doing, even though you're doing them, you're not doing them in the best way, producing the results that you want to get?
Well, the simple fact, and I hate to bring, I'm answering you so matter of factly, like my answers are the only ones that are out there. But in this world that we're in, I mean, we're under live fire. I mean, it happens every day. So a lot of people say, here's something which is a good example. I've just through years and years of study of this, I realized certain things about salespeople. Most salespeople really are afraid of their competition. They'd rather be in a field that has no competition. They think then it's going to be much easier for them, and your customers are just going to get your product. So, and which is kind of true. Well, there's a way to do that. There's a way to ensure that you have no competition, and that is you work when your competition is not. You don't do what your competition. Your competition's every day from 9 to 5 is doing the same thing. Don't do that. You work when they're not working. So here's when salespeople aren't working in general. They don't work on Mondays. They don't work on Fridays for their own reasons. And they don't work when it rains. I don't know why, but they don't work. But if it rains on a Monday, baby, I'm after it. I mean, I know for a fact I'm the only salesperson in America who's making prospecting calls that day. I know for a fact nobody's there. So you want to get that. So I know that I'm going to get better results on those days. Just because from the history of life, I've made hundreds of thousands, maybe 1,000,000 calls on strangers in my life. You know, you're not doing anything new here. This whole thing has been happening since Jesus, for crying out loud. Everybody knows it's not like you're inventing. The world isn't new because you just got into the sales business. It's the same thing. I'm telling you, if you talk to 20 people today, you're going to get a lead and a customer. You'll just do it. It'll just happen. You automatically start adapting and adjusting. Now, we create unbelievable scripts for people. We create incredible programs for people so you can avoid saying the wrong words and things like that. But that's secondary. Even if you're an insurance salesperson and you walked up to 100 people a day and said, "You don't want insurance, do you?" The worst possible thing you could say, "You don't want insurance, do you?" You'd probably sell some insurance.
Great advice.
And that's why it's so important to keep track, because a lot of times, the average salesperson will spend 15 minutes worrying about calling somebody, calling that person, getting their voicemail, leaving a terrible message on that voicemail. And so, in a half hour, they're exhausted, but they've only made one phone call.
That's an excellent point. And for the record, you're saying to the Scaling Up audience that "You don't want this water treatment program, do you?" is not a good sales pitch.
But you know what? If you said it to 100 people, it would work.
All right.
It would. It would. Now, there's a better way to do it. There's a better way to do it, and I can help you out.
Well, how about we talk about the anatomy of the sales process? So I get up this morning, I get dressed, I comb my hair, I'm ready to go out and make some cold calls. What should I do?
Yeah, well, my gosh. It was as if I wrote down these questions. These are just like layups. You're good at this. I'm telling you. This isn't your first rodeo, is it?
I've interviewed a few, but none as good as you, Mr. Dan.
Oh, you see? Well, that's the first thing. When you first meet somebody, you want to give a compliment. Here, I'm going to give you a little secret, and then I'm going to answer your question. When you're first approaching somebody, understand this. There's 3 things that your prospect has, but more importantly, they have and they want to give it to you. So they have something that they want. It's going to make them feel good to give you one of these 3 things. So if you ask for them, you're in a much better position to start a conversation about water treatment. So here they are. The first thing that people love to give you that they have is help. I wonder if you could help me. If you go to Home Depot right now and you say, where are the wrenches? They'll say aisle 7. If you say, "Hey, I wonder if you can help me, where are the wrenches?" They will grab you by the wrist and pull you over to the wrenches and show you where they are. People have a need to help. Makes them feel worthwhile. You're giving them a gift by letting them help you. That's the first thing. The second thing is an opinion. Everybody's got an opinion, and they love to give. I wonder what your opinion is. What do you do about I don't know your water treatment things, but it's something in relation to that. I wonder if I can ask your opinion. Are you happy with the blah, blah, blah about the water here? Always ask someone an opinion and ask that. Once they give you your opinion, you're basically in a backhanded way, you're telling them that they're smart. You never ask the opinion of somebody who's a moron. And then the final one that they had, and you guys ought to be writing this down because this is magic. You ask for somebody's advice. Gosh. Hey, nothing better. Sometimes I'll use that, but you want to get past the person who answers the phone. You call them the gatekeeper. I call them the sales assistant. They'll move you to the right person. But you ask that person who answers the phone, the first person that you call, "Hey, I wonder if you're going to ask your advice. What would a guy like me, we do water treatment services, who would I need to speak with that would be interested in this type of thing?" And let them give you their advice. It's magic. Okay, that's a little sidebar that I went off. But what was your question again?
To be honest, I can't even remember what it was. I was so mesmerized by the magic that you were laying down.
Yeah, that stuff that's just inside. That's as good as it gets.
Well, let me ask you this. I call the receptionist the gatekeeper.
That gatekeeper word needs to be thrown on the trash heap. There are 2 things that make my blood boil. One is that stupid book by Arthur Miller, The Death of a Salesman. Gosh, I mean, it's the worst. You can't ask. It's changed the mentality. That's why my mother can't stand a salesperson, because of that stupid play. It's ruined an entire generation of people. Okay, that, and the second one is the gatekeeper. Never use that word. I mean, that person is your key to the kingdom. That person is a gold mine. If you treat that person with respect, treat them like they're the boss, treat that person like they're the decision makers, you're giving them a compliment. I mean, they're getting beaten up. They have people calling them, trying to get around them all day, trying sneaky things, and it's a terrible life existence. And then you come along saying, hey, I wonder if I can ask your advice. You probably know everything about that. You've been working there a while. Who would I need to speak with about that? And all of a sudden they're like, yeah, I'm going to help you. Are you kidding me? And they start working. And then they say, I can't tell you how many people I've become friends with who have actually called me and said, and now's the time. I'll hook you up with them right now. You know, they become your advocate. They become your helper. They become a resource for you. And you could call them a gatekeeper, like they're there with hold like an armed guard, trying to keep people out. Ugh. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm off my high horse now.
I think it's a great new paradigm that we all need to have. So let's get back to the anatomy of a sales call.
Yes. Okay. Well, the anatomy of a sales call starts the day before, or the week before, what have you. But if you wake up in the morning and say, "What am I going to do today?" That's the death of a salesman. That's a problem. Your day needs to be scheduled. For instance, me, I'll give you mine. On Mondays and Tuesdays, I do coaching calls. That's what I do. Mondays and Tuesdays, I work with my clients and I do coaching calls. There's no question. I can wake up on Monday morning. I know what I'm doing. I have people scheduled throughout the day. Wednesday, Thursday, I'm cold calling. I'm prospecting to try to. I'm prospecting for meetings. I'm prospecting for workshops that I'm putting together. I'm doing prospecting to get people to come to my webinars. I'm doing all sorts of things there. That's Wednesday and Thursday. And Friday is a kind of a kind of a catch up day, but I'm planning for the next week and doing all sorts of stuff and all in the process, following up with people. But I know what I'm doing every day. And then the day is broken down even more specifically with, the time I wake up and walk the dog and exercise and all this stuff. But if I can give you one tip that's really helped a lot of my people as far as scheduling their days, and it's really been a terrific thing, is have you ever had this situation where you wake up before your alarm clock and you're laying there in bed and you're thinking about all the stuff you have to do today?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you're putting it all in order and all that stuff, and it's just messing with your brain, and then you forget, and so you go back and do the list again in your head, and you're like, well, I used to do that, and then I would write it down. I used to do that, but it drove me nuts because I didn't have a restful sleep. Now I do this. I wake up in the morning, and if I start thinking about what I'm going to do, I stop. I say, I'll think about it while I'm exercising. And I get up, and I go outside, and I walk, run, whatever I do. But while I'm moving, it's much easier for me to put my thoughts together of what I'm going to do today and get it all rolling. So my suggestion is, exercise first. It's one of those things, your mother tells you to do, everybody knows you to do, and you just don't do it. Wake up in the morning and go for a walk. And while you're on your walk, plan your day on your walk. If you just do that, you'll add 10 years to your life and 2 hours to your day.
Great advice.
Because if you get into work, and say, what am I going to do today? Someone's going to walk in and hijack your entire day. You have to have a plan.
Great advice.
Yeah, it's all great advice. That's what I do. It's great.
Absolutely. It's coming out of you, right? It has to be great.
This is what you need to do to tell everybody. I have several websites. The Sales Energizer is one, the speaking one. But if you go to coldcallguy.com, coldcallguy.com, and there's a little blue box there. Fill that out. Get on my newsletter. And we get videos every week and things like that. And when we're done here, I'll have a special thing for your listeners as well.
Excellent. Well, you are a sales coach. What do you do for your clients? How do you get them to become better? You mentioned a couple of things, but for somebody that's never become part of that process, what can they expect?
There are certain traits of successful people, and there are certain people that are coachable and certain people that aren't. And a lot of times I'll ask, where are you right now in terms of your sales, in terms of your life, in terms of all this stuff? Where do you want to go? And then they'll give me an answer of their goals that they want to get to and all that stuff. And then I ask this question. I say, what's stopping you? Because most people know. I go, what's stopping you from getting to where you want to go? And I'll tell you what I'm listening for. I'm listening for the people who say, I'm not planning my day, or I'm not waking up early enough, or I'm not motivated, or I'm not this or that. As long as they say I'm not, then I know I have something I can work with. If they say, well, traffic is like this, I've been sick, I have my wife's not working, or my husband's not working, I'm doing. If they're blaming something else, they're just not ready to be a millionaire salesperson. They're just not ready. And I'll tell you why. The most important thing that successful salespeople, and I'm coaching $1 million salespeople, people that earn $100,000 a month in commission. I mean, people that earn big money. The way they got there is by taking full responsibility of the good that's happened in their life and the not good. And then they ask this question. They ask, how do I? How do I? Not, why are they always saying no? Why is the gatekeeper always not letting me through? Why am I not doing this or that? They say, how do I? How do I get more customers? How do I get through the gatekeeper? How do I figure out what to say that gets them interested? How do I wake up earlier? How do I keep myself more accountable? How do I? Because the really successful or the motivated salesperson, the one that I could really help, is the one that's taken that responsibility and saying, and they will come up with the answers. And then what the coach does, this guy like me does, is put somebody on basically accountability program that they have to live up to their own expectations. They have to raise their expectations. I'll come back to that. I remember when I was a little boy, I had a friend, Joel Haspel, and he was the rich kid on the block. His dad had a Razor Mills was the name of the company. It was a big fabric store. It was great. And we used to take us there. We'd jump around on all the rolls. It was a big place. They were loaded. And Joel said to me once, he says, when I grow up, I expect to be rich like my dad too, because I'm brought up in this and I know how to do it. And I expect to be rich. And he is. And he said to me, and you're probably going to be less than me because, your parents aren't, you don't have this, and you don't expect that of yourself. And I remembered that from the time I was 8 years old. People very rarely achieve their goals. It's some sort of, ethereal thing. It hangs out there in the distance and you're like, oh, maybe one day I'll get that. But people always, always reach their expectations. And so if I can take somebody so that they could start expecting to do those actions every day. They expect to do 20 calls a day. They expect to ask for the order. They expect to try new things. They expect to go to networking meetings. They expect it of themselves. Once they raise their expectations of themselves, then with me keeping them accountable to all that through the various mechanisms that we use, it's a guarantee. It's a guaranteed win. How's that for a proclamation?
I think that's a great one. I'm trying to think of some of the excuses that I've heard from people over the years. So I'm going to throw a couple at you, and you tell me why that's not a good way of thinking and how we can think better. So a lot of people in our industry, they're technicians and they're salespeople. And a lot of people think, well, hey, I can either be a really good technician or I can be a really good salespeople, but I can't do both.
Right. What's another one? Or is that the big one?
That's probably a big one. Another one is, somebody's price is lower. So I can't compete over that. Or we don't have the market share. Or they haven't heard of our name. Or, if only we had this type of marketing material, then I could go in and I could get that person to return my call. Little things like that.
All right. Well, let me tell you the first thing about excuses. The only difference between an excuse and a reason is the way that it's spelled. I mean, it is the exact same thing. And nobody likes excuses. You don't even like telling excuses to yourself. A father-in-law once, he was like an ex-father-in-law removed, with all the marriages, you never know what anybody, he was related somehow, but he was a big guy in Orkin Pest Control, and he was a sales manager, and people would come in and say that they were late, and he would say, the only excuse for being late is you didn't leave early enough. Don't give me the traffic. If you left early enough, you would have avoided the traffic. So you didn't leave early. And that's also somebody who's taking responsibility. I'm sorry, Mr. Geiger, I didn't leave early enough. It won't happen again. That's the only thing he would accept. He wouldn't accept anything else. He'd fire somebody if they said something else. That's the only thing he would accept. And I say the same thing for people with any of these excuses. This is all in your head. I have to be a technician or a salesperson. I bet the people who are saying that are probably married. So I can either be a good spouse or a good provider. I could be either a good, guard. I bet they mow the lawn. I could either do good at mowing the lawn that's a bunch of garbage. You could do everything. And you know what it starts with? Being a good person. Who would you like to do business with? That's what they should be asking. How do I act like the person that I'd like to do business with? I bet that person goes home at night and, 2 days a week studies a little on the technicians, or studies a little on the sales world, or, watches some videos on the sales world. I have a membership site. You could log on to it at any time, and it gives you all sorts of information and motivation and, technical skills in sales. And people go on that whenever they want and just do it. Maybe if you do it 15 minutes a day, or maybe if you do it 20 minutes a day. But anything you want to get really good at, you would make the time to do it. And I don't have to tell you to stop watching TV. My people that I coach, I don't tell them to stop watching TV. They just stop watching TV. I don't tell them to stop watching the news first thing in the morning. They just don't have the time to watch the news first thing in the morning and let it ruin their day. Stop protecting their mind, their most important asset, and they're going to put all this garbage in it before they get started. I don't have to tell people not to waste time on Facebook and LinkedIn. I tell them how to use Facebook and LinkedIn to get notoriety and get business and get more action and get more things going in their lives. People just do that. So how do I become the person that people would like to do business with? And it magically happens once you're held accountable to it. And as far as the price thing goes, please. And now I have an entire, rebuttals things on how to get past that, which is really good if it's a price thing. But, if all you're selling is price, you really are that commodity. And even if you get the person on price, or you get that company on price, you're going to lose them for a penny less. So you never want to do that. So about 30% of the people you deal with are price sensitive, and they're only going to buy the lowest price. My suggestion for those is make sure you have handy 3 telephone numbers of your best competitor or your worst competitor, however you want to think it, and say, hey, these people will do it for that price. Go ahead and give it to them. A customer that costs you money is no customer. The profit out of that comes right out of the bottom line, which comes right out of your drawers. So I wouldn't do that. But there's ways to overcome. Price is nothing. I'll tell you why people buy from you. There are 4 things. You might want to write these down too, okay? They buy from you because they like you. They buy from you because they trust you. By the way, a lot of people think trust comes first. It's really like gets you in the door. Any female that's listening to this right now, raise your hand if you ever went out on a second date, not a first date. A second date with a guy that you didn't like at all, but you trusted him. You wouldn't do it. Like gets you into the game, but very quickly trust comes in. Then they'll buy from you because they believe you can do the work. That's when your company's history comes in, your experience in the industry and all that stuff comes in. That's when they look at you on LinkedIn and they look at your website and they look at all the videos that you're making and all that stuff, and they decide whether or not you have a credibility. And then the 4th thing is kind of the glue that holds it all together, and that is that they will have developed a desire to do business with you. My son started a little junk removal business when he was 11 years old. He didn't drive yet, but he decided he wasn't going to go to college in 6th grade, and he says, I got to start a business. So he started junk removal. He knocked on people's doors, and His first day out, the kid earned $250. He was 11 years old. I looked at him, I said, Matthew, how did you do this? And he goes, Daddy, you don't understand. I said, enlighten me, son. He goes, you think these people are giving me their old chairs and couches and lawnmowers? By the way, lawnmowers are made out of metal. You take to the recycling place, you get paid again. But he goes, you think they're giving me their couches and chairs and lawnmowers because they need to get rid of their couches and chairs and lawnmowers? I said, yes, duh. He said, no, Daddy. He said, they're giving me these things, and this is the point that I'm the whole way just to get to this point. He said, they're giving me these things because it makes them feel good to do business with an 11-year-old. That little bastard had it right all along. You see, he knows his value. He knows that they had a desire to do business with him. Now, let's say he cost a little bit more. You think that would make a difference? The value that they're getting, the way they could go home at night and say, hey, this nice young boy came here and we gave him a lawnmower and gave him $10 and we're all happy. The feeling that they could go home and feel secure and safe that they're good people because they did business with the boy. Imagine if your customers felt that way. Once they have that desire, and you've had it too. I bet everybody listening to this right now has stopped your car, turned around, and bought lemonade from two girls on the side of the road, and you weren't even thirsty, were you? But you did it because you wanted to make them feel good. You create enough of an attraction with somebody that they say, man, I just want to do business with this person. Hell, price isn't an object. Price is nothing.
Well, Dan, you've made the sale. How do you keep that relationship going?
Well, and that's the whole thing. By the way, I want to let you know that it's a lot easier to make a friend out of a customer than it is to make a customer out of a friend. A lot of people, meet the person and wine and dine and all this stuff and never get around to asking for the order. I'm telling people, just reverse it. You ask someone for the order right off the bat, see if they're interested, and then go through it. Once they become a customer, then you make them your friend because you want to do that. And that's how you do it. And that comes with constant, consistent, valuable follow-up. Constantly offering ideas that are going to help them improve their business. You all know your own goals. You all know your own company goals. You start learning the goals of your customer and help them achieve that, and you become a valuable resource, an asset for them to help their own career. Hell, you don't got to worry about selling anymore. They're too busy buying. You become their guy. Even if you're a woman, everybody wants a guy. I got a guy. Where do you get your car fixed? Oh, I got a guy. You got a plumber? Yeah, I got a guy. Once you're the guy, price is out the window. Everything's out the window. I have an insurance guy. His name is Bob Steer. I've been using him for 20 years. I could tell you why I'm using Bob Steer for 20 years. On my birthday, it's August 10th, every year, the same day my birthday is. And I can expect 2 phone calls. I can expect a phone call from my mother at 10:36 in the morning. And I can expect a call, not an email, not a card, not a fancy text or something. I can expect a telephone call from Bob Steer. And do you think another insurance guy can call to me and say, hey, listen, I got a better price? I got Bob Steer, man. I don't need prices. I got Bob Steer. This guy's my man. He's my guy. He will hook me up with anything. I got Bob Steer. You become somebody else's Bob Steer. That's how you keep a customer. I feel like I'm yelling at you, Trace. I don't mean it.
No, you're doing great. You're excited. You are energizing the Scaling Up Nation is
By the
what
way,
you are doing
you
right
got a
now.
great asset. You got a good name, Trace. There's not that many Traces out there. It's a strong.
I've met 2, and I know of 1.
Yeah, see, but you got to use it. Nobody forgets you. People will forget Dan Jourdan. No one will forget Trace. That's a cool.
All right, so give me some advice. What should I do with it?
With your name? Yeah, well, they know it, so you should just make sure. Hey, I wouldn't even say your last name. I would say your Trace. Just like your Elvis. I just want you to get known as Trace, the Trace. is that guy. And you need a tagline for yourself that needs to be all over the place.
All right, more to follow.
Yes. We got to get that go. Get that going on.
Fair enough. Let's talk about referrals.
Oh, yes. Yeah, and that's the most immediate results that you could do. In fact, that's the first thing we do when I'm dealing with somebody and I want to increase their sales right away. That's the first thing we do. We put together a program for referrals. So I'll give you there's about 7 things that we do, but I'll give you the first one right now. And you can go to work with that. That might be all you need. But everybody's on LinkedIn, right?
I would think so.
Yeah, everybody's pretty much on LinkedIn, and they have customers or even prospects. Even if you're going to see a prospect or a customer, you should be getting 5 or 6 referrals from everybody. So what you do is, let's say I'm going to see you, Trace. I'm going to look you up on LinkedIn, and we're going to meet. Let's say, and I'm going to look you up on LinkedIn, and I'm going to look at your friends, or whoever you're LinkedIn with, and I'm going to pick out 5 or 6 or 10 of them that I'd like to meet, people that I'd like. And I'm going to print out those pages. Then when I come to see you, I'm going to show you, I'm going to say, hey, Trace, you got a really cool name. That must be why you have so many friends here on LinkedIn. I was looking at your friends on LinkedIn, and I printed out 10 or so right here. I go, do you know this guy, Bob? Do you know him? Just play along, role play with me. Say yes.
I do know Bob. Yes, he's a great friend of mine.
Oh, okay, good. All right. Would it be okay if I called him and let him know that I just talked to you?
And I can't imagine anybody would say no on the spot.
Right, nobody would say that. And then I'm going to follow with a little bit. So, Bob, so you do know Bob. Let me ask you, if you had to pick out one really good quality about Bob, what do you think it is? If you had to just say something.
I would say that I am one of his friends.
You are one of his friends, and you're only friends with really nice people.
That's a good way of putting that. Exactly.
Okay, good. Okay, so we'll do it. So then I would do that to 5 or 6 people, and if you know them, and so I'll get those. Now, the next day, I'm going to call Bob. But when I call Bob, I don't call Bob simply by saying, hey, Bob, I got your name from Trace, and I thought I'd call you, do business with me. I'm going to do it like this. I'm going to follow a normal sales process, which is always compliment first. When you're asking for somebody's advice, you're giving them a backhanded compliment. Same thing like this. So I'm going to call Bob. I say, Bob, this is Dan Jourdan, Sales Energizer. I was talking to your friend Trace, and do you know what he said about you?
I can't imagine what he said about me. What did he say about me?
But at all, so now you're interested. If you're Bob now, you're interested. Yeah, what the heck did he say about me? He said that you're about the nicest guy he's ever met. He's only friends with nice people, and you're on the top of the list. What do you think of that?
I think that sounds incredible.
Okay. Now, all of a sudden, by just association, you kind of like me more because I just gave you now you're feeling good, and you're associating that feeling good with me. That gives me an opening to say, hey, I was speaking with Trace, and he thought we both thought this might be a good thing that I can offer you. Do you have a minute or so we can talk? I'll tell you why I called today.
Absolutely.
And then I just go into it. But it's a way to not only get a referral, but to use the referral. And that's really effective. You can get 5 or 6 referrals off of any customer or prospect that you meet. And then once they tell you something really good about the person, when you have an in, and it's much easier for them. They don't have to call somebody and do any action. You do it all. You do it all, and you make everybody feel good. It's that particular tactic in the insurance world and in the financial planning world has yielded hundreds of millions of dollars worth of products sold.
Again, great advice. Well, let's keep going down that trail. How do we shorten the sales cycle?
Well, you see, now you're getting to the nitty gritty. Again, this is a process, but I'll give you the main points at the beginning. The thing, remember I said earlier, it's a lot easier to make a friend out of a customer than a customer out of a friend?
Absolutely.
The sexiest thing, the most attractive thing about anybody is confidence. People are drawn to it. They need it. They want it. And secretly, everybody wants to be led. There's some psychological things that we don't have the time to go through right now. But you need to be secure with the fact that your product isn't for everybody. Not everybody wants it. And they have their own reasons. They might be getting it cheaper. They might be doing business with their son or their nephew or their daughter-in-law. They might be doing, for whatever reason, your product isn't for everybody. You've heard of the 80-20 rule?
Absolutely.
Okay, the 80-20 rule, you'll get 80% of your business, revenue out of 20% of your clients, that whole thing, and it works out. I've always been 70-30. 30% of the people I meet just don't dig my program. It's just, I rub them the wrong way. That's fine. Who do you think I do business with? I do business with the 70%. And the other 30% of people, they're nice, they're good, they're perfect, they're well-rounded, they're contributors to the society. Very happy. I have no ill will towards them. They just don't need me. They don't dig my stuff. That's fine. The same thing's for you and your water treatment. Some people don't need it. So I'm going to say something. We're going to role play just for a second, and I'm going to create some tension. So I think this would be really good for you, and the price is $35,000.
Well, that's way too high.
Okay, but you wouldn't even say that. There's always that silence, that silent tension.
Sure.
So you want to break that silence, and you break the silence by using this little saying. So it's $35,000. How's that sound? And now you have to answer. Now you say it's way too high, and then I can go with it, and that's fine. But the first thing to shorten the sales cycle is to constantly check in with people. How does that sound? Are we on the right track? Is this something you're still interested in? Does that make sense? Or is that fair enough? Whatever it is, you constantly need to check in with people, but especially on the front end. So that's a long-winded way of saying, here's where I'm going with it. When we're first meeting, let's say you agree to a meeting and I come to your place, I'm going to say something like this. I'm going to say, Trace, I really appreciate you letting me come here today. I know how valuable your time is, and I want to waste a second of your time. So if at any time during this presentation you think we're going down the wrong track, or you think this is something that is not going to benefit you at all, and you really are not going to make a move on it or anything like that, feel free to tell me. You can say no to me. I'm a big boy. I can handle it. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. And conversely, if in this process, if I'm doing it through my questioning and I find out that we're not a good fit, I'll let you know that too. And the other thing is, if, however, through the questioning and all this, I find out it's a good product for you, and I think it'll help you, and we can give the testimonials, and you agree with all that, I'm going to ask you to buy it. And you could say one of three things. You could say yes, or in which case we'll move forward. You could say no, in which case we'll move forward in a different way. Or you can give me some form of, I need to think about it. All I ask is you don't choose option number 3. Okay, I'll just take that as a no. You could say no to me, right?
Well, let me ask you about that. Maybe you're getting to this, but the I'll think about it, salespeople have so many I'll think about it's in their pocket that they hope are going to develop it someday or another, and they never do. So I'm hoping you're going to get to how we free ourselves of all those useless wishes, which is probably what they really amount to.
Well, we do it right at the beginning.
Okay.
If you say I think about it, I'm just going to take that as a no. Okay, because a lot of times now, at the end, a lot of times they'll still say I want to think about it. In which case, I always say this. I say, all right, well, let me ask you: are you saying I think about it just because you want to be nice, because you're a nice person, or are you really just kind of saying no, and that's just an easy way to get rid of me?
I love that you're asking that question.
Yeah. Oh, that's exactly what because that's what it is. And now if it's like, no, we really need to think about it. And then I could say, okay, great. I appreciate that. Really, I wanted to know if you were the decision maker beforehand. I would have taken care of that. But I could go into a little further from there, and I go, well, let me help you out with what you're looking to think about it. What areas are there? And I'll we can outline them, and I'll get you whatever. But the first thing to always say is, I appreciate you saying you need to think about it, even though you told me you wouldn't do that before. But are you saying that just because you want to be nice, because you're a nice guy, or is it something you really need to think about? And if they say they really need to think about it, well, great. Well, in addition to that, what is it that you need to think about it? And so I could. But if you're walking out the door and there's still what I need to think about it, and you don't hammer down like a follow-up visit with an actual date or stuff, I would just exit out. It's done.
Great advice. And I'm thinking of all the people that are listening that are thinking, okay, I really don't have this one. I really don't have this one. I really don't have this one.
Oh, And that's the reason why many salespeople don't ask for the order. I mean, it's one thing, you're afraid that someone's going to say no, but you're also afraid that someone's going to say yes. You lose something very important when someone says yes. You lose your best prospect. Hope and, looking at your leads list and all that stuff in the morning and taking that and think, oh, this, looking at all the revenue that it could possibly generate. You say, look, I got $3 million on the board here. You really have, but that's, you need that for your psychology. You need that for your emotion. When you don't have somebody keeping you accountable, when you don't have somebody working with you on a regular basis, then you'll use whatever you have, even if it's fake.
Let's talk about closing. You ready for that? Always, right? You're always closing, right?
Well, yes. Closing starts at the introduction. When I gave that introduction, I said, listen, if I think it's something that's good for you, I'm going to ask you to buy it. I had a client yesterday. I picked up a new client today. Someone I spoke with yesterday, and I gave that same thing at the beginning. I said, you're right on the edge. Do you want me to help you? That was my close. I know where you want to go. We know where you are. We know where you want to go. You know the solution to get you there. Would you like me to help you? I mean, that was my close. And they said yes. And I said, great. And then we can move on from there. So, I mean, the closing doesn't need to be hard, but it needs to be all throughout. And, they need to know that you're there to sell. And they know it, but you might as well be upfront with it. I mean, you're not fooling anybody by tiptoeing around. Oh, I'm just here to visit for an investigation visit. This is just an exploratory meeting. So you're saying that if I wanted to buy, you wouldn't sell it to me right now. Oh, no, we'll sell. Okay, so you're really not here. Your ultimate goal is you want to sell this. They know it, you know it, so you come out and say it. And if it's tough for you at the end, use the world's best line. It's okay to say no to me. My membership program that I put together, it's helped more people than I could think of right now expand their business. It's unbelievable. Just when you need a little bit of motivation, click and you go on it. 15 minutes a day changes your life. It's a $297 product with the discounts that I can give you with a code that I'll give you today. It'll take it down to $98. It's a lifetime. For the rest of your life, you could always go on that thing. It's an unbelievable offer. If you're looking to grow your business, if you like what you hear, if these type of ideas and motivation can help you, I'm going to tell you to buy it because it's going to make your life better. And I'm not, at the least bit, shameful of saying that. It's making people's life. I have a gal who's a recruiter who, never, with muscling, trying to pay her bills. It's a crazy business. Made $49,000 last month in commissions. $49,000. There are people that don't make $49,000 in a year. Now, she got that business not because she waited for it to fall on her lap. It's because she closed. She said, I think I can get these people into your play. Let's get it to work. And she closed the people on there. I have an advertising gal, made $35,000 last month, $35,000 selling advertising on websites to people in the Chamber of Commerce. How in tarnation can you do that in the tourism industry? And it's because she followed a method of calling every day a certain amount of people and saying certain words, saying it's okay to say no to me. In fact, her line was this: I understand a lot of people don't buy advertising for their business. A lot of people just don't do it. It's not important. And they have, they run their business their whole lives and all that stuff, and they're happy with that. Other people who want to explode their business do. If you're one of those that don't buy advertising, well, let me know now, and I can call somebody else. But that person is so set up. And not everybody wants my coaching program. It's not for everybody. Not everybody wants to grow. It's a lot of work. Everybody doesn't want to put in that work. And those people, ought not to call me. Those people are great for a membership program because they can do it on their own leisure. I'm passionate about sales. I'm passionate about this whole industry because everybody has untapped potential. I have I'll go back to my son again, who he really did. He's 18 now, and we all kind of pushed him into going to college. He started Kennesaw this year, which is a state university here in Georgia. And he's a boy who likes to use his hands and all this stuff. And he's continued his junk removal business. So he went to 1.5 classes before he went to the administration office and withdrew. So he didn't even last an entire day. 1.5 classes, and he stopped. And he came home and he said to me, he said, "Daddy, you knew I was going to quit anyway. I might as well do it now and save the money." And he has started that junk removal business. That boy is to the point where for money that he saved and what he did, his next step at 18 years old is to buy a piece of property to start his retail shop that he does from all the stuff that he gets from this junk removal business. He's turned it into a real thing. He's making real grown-up type money right now because the boy knows how to close. The boy knows how to sell. The boy knows how to talk to people in a way to, instead of them, because no one likes to be sold, but people love to buy. And so every salesperson out there can create their own little business, their own, little industry, and they become the branded winner. They're the leader. People go to them, the individual, not to their company. And once you build up that list and you build up that client base, heck, that stays with you for the rest of your life. And it's untapped potential that I see going to waste, and it ticks me off. And it doesn't have to be that way, and I don't think it will. We're going to change the way people think about salespeople, and we're going to change the way salespeople think about themselves. So that's my passion.
Well, I can't thank you enough for coming on Scaling Up. This was a fun interview. I think I'll have you back sometime and we'll just do role play for a complete hour. I think that'd be fun.
There we go.
Well, Dan, I'm going to have everything that you mentioned on my show notes page. A lot of our listeners are driving, so please keep your hands on 10 and 2, and I'll just go to my show notes page and I'll have all of that information for you. I can't thank you enough for coming on Scaling Up. You were a lot of fun. Thanks again.
All righty. Take care.
Well, Scaling Up Nation, if you haven't gotten it already, we are all in sales. And sales is an industry that some people might not think kindly of. Dan's mom doesn't even like what he does because she thinks he's a salesperson. Well, folks, he is a salesperson, but there's nothing wrong with that. I like to look at sales it is how we communicate with the other person that we are trying to get our point across with. A lot of people think that sales is something you do to someone, and I think that is where the problem is. I would like us to change our paradigm about sales, and it's not something we do to someone, it's something we do with someone. And this is how we do it. We are water treatment professionals, and we know more about water treatment than the people that we're sitting across from 9 times out of 10. So now where sales comes in is we need to be able to include them in the conversation, and it has to be a conversation with what their problems are, whether they perceive them or they don't know about their problems. Educate yourself about how they do what they do, and maybe that's why these problems are coming up, and then also educate them on what the problems are that you see and how you are going to solve them. Folks, you are the expert, but it doesn't matter what you know. And the old cliche is people don't care what you know until they know that you care. But if you don't care about the other individual that's sitting across from you, I don't think anything is going to happen other than you've wasted a lot of time, including their time. If you are the expert and you can expertly explain to them what's going on and how you are going to solve their problems, folks, that is sales. And they will thank you for doing that because they cannot solve those problems without you. Now, there's a ton of sales books out there, and I have read so many sales books, and I want to tell you that the underlying theme of most sales books is how can I manipulate the other party into doing what I want them to do? And I would say that that premise is flawed because, again, sales isn't something we do to someone, it's something we do with someone. So if you read a sales book, my ask to you is you use it to help you communicate, but never manipulate. We are water treatment professionals. We know what we're doing. So the sales books, the sales training can help us be able to bring our point across and not seem like we're a know-it-all, not seem like we're better than somebody else, but do it in a way to make the person that's across from us very comfortable. Now, surprisingly enough, I'm going to tell you my favorite sales book, and you're going to say, what? That's not a sales book. So I'm going to go ahead and do it. It's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Dr. Stephen R. Covey. And a lot of you have come up to me in the Scaling Up Nation and said you have read that book, and I'm willing to bet those of you that have read that have never thought about that being a sales book. I think it's the best sales book out there because it talks about all the habits, and I've talked about all the habits on the show, so I'm going to try not to do that on this show. But the first 3 habits deal with yourself. And you have to manage yourself, and you have to be strong in yourself in order to work with others. And that's what habits 4, 5, and 6 are. It's how can somebody that's completed the first 3 habits work with somebody else that may not have completed those first 3 habits and do it in a way that you create something stronger together than you could have created by yourself. So I challenge you, if you've read the book, maybe read it again and think about using that for sales. Again, I look at sales as communication, not something that you do to someone. I don't think there's any secret. Successful people are willing to do things that unsuccessful people aren't willing to do. And Dan mentioned a lot of them. One is they simply make phone calls. Oh my gosh, I remember making phone calls and working myself up to making that phone call, and that phone felt like it weighed 25 pounds. Of course, it doesn't. That's all in our mind. But when people do that consistently so they can continue to find new people to tell their story to, that's what makes them successful. The same thing with cold calls. It's so hard to go up and meet somebody who you've never met before and see if you can help them with what you do as a career. Also, successful people, they make a lot of commitments and they keep a lot of commitments. In fact, they keep every commitment. So if you find yourself telling somebody that you're going to do something and you're not 100% sure that you can follow through with that, I would reconsider making that commitment, because that's how we build trust with people. And just as Dan said, and just as every sales book that I've ever read says, if people don't trust you, they're not going to buy from you. If people don't like you, of course, as Dan says, they're not going to buy from you either. But it's hard to like somebody you don't trust. And if you want to try to test that, go ahead. But I'm willing to bet you're going to agree with me. It's hard to like somebody that you can't trust. Also, successful people follow up. They ask for referrals. They ask who else would get some benefit out of the relationship that you and I have. Or, we just had this big problem with your cooling tower. I fixed it. Is there anybody else that you know that could benefit from a service like that? Don't be scared to ask for other people to help. Because if you're good at what you do and you keep commitments and those people know that you're going to follow through on each and everything that you do, they are going to be delighted to share you with people they know, because now they're going to get the credit for all the work that you did. You fixed other people's problems because they introduced you. So never be afraid to ask, who else can you help? And then I think the biggest thing that we all have problems with is there's always that big 2-letter word, no. And when somebody tells me no after I've done all this work, it's so hard not to take that personally. We're all going to do it. We all are going to take it personally. But here is what I think successful people do is they maybe take a moment and then they internalize, okay, what could I have done better? So that might have turned into a yes. And folks, I got to tell you, I love to talk to a prospective customer and ask them, what could I have done better? What would have made you say yes? And a lot of times you can actually get the customer re-engaged so that way you can come to a better solution than perhaps you presented. So don't take it personally, learn from it, And don't use that as an excuse to stop doing the things that you need to do to make yourself successful. Folks, you are in the water treatment industry, so be the best you can be in everything you do in the water treatment industry. That includes learning everything you can about all the technical stuff out there. That includes self-development. How can you make yourself better? So if I do something right now, how am I better the next time that I do this? And as I started with the top of the show, a lot of you have come to me and said, this show allows me to think that way, and I am a better water treater today because I listen to this show and I try some of the things that I knew I should have been trying, but the show is a push to make me a little bit better. Folks, if this podcast is making the industry better, I have done my job. I do have an ask for you. If you know a water treater out there, let them know about scaling up H2O, because if we can make the entire industry better, we are working within a better industry. Folks, I can't wait to talk to you next time on Scaling Up H2O.